Thank you for that kind introduction. I'll be talking about too many issues, so not much on each issues probably. Yeah. So the introduction: where am I? This is the place where I work. This color. Okay. So my whole professional life, except for the years I have been in Australia and sometime outside the country, probably few months in UK. I've been working in Colombo, and 2011 I took up the chair of this new university. And as you see, the poverty map was not even developed for North and East because that was done in about 4 years ago. So there was unrest in that area. But now the accessibility index is there, and so I'm in a fairly rural medical school. The medical school is in the city, but the draining population to the hospital and the area is fairly rural. Are there issues, or are we imagining whether there are issues? So what I can say is this antivenom serum. The antivenom serum is the same antivenom serum we have been using. Antivenoms are the serums are the one which we treat snake bites. So that when the snake bites, and if the patient developed what you call envenoming or the signs of snake bite poisoning, we give antivenom. And the antivenoms are the same antivenom that we are using since 1980. There's no new developments in antivenom. Why? Because it's one of the neglected tropical diseases. Probably, yeah. Anyway, so these antivenoms have a huge number of reactions, or the very high incidence or high prevalence of reactions, and giving antivenom sometimes is more problematic, produces more morbidity than not giving antivenom. So it's we don't know. Although the suicide deaths are halved, probably due to better infrastructure, tuk-tuks, the three-wheelers, and the road network, decrease in the lethality of the organophosphate, and the improvement of health facilities and staff, the attempts have increased. So mental health has deteriorated due to probably the more stresses and the open economy, but suicide deaths have been also gone down because of the better infrastructure. So there are issues, and we have not addressed it. That's what I am feeling. The Sri Lanka probably produces best clothes, probably best with India, Philippines. We produces one of the best softwares, and so we still uses in my computer. I think it's original software. So don't worry. But we mainly uses pirated software. And so we are what you call real occupation is tailors, cyber coolies, and research coolies. We have not produced our own research. So the scientific issues, underrepresentation of developing countries in research literature, that's been well recorded. Only 6.5% of the publications in these journals, the 5 main journals, New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ, Annals, JAMA. Only 6.5% of the publications in these journals have authors from countries where there is 90% of the world population lives. Between 2009, out of 1,740, only 2.1% were randomized control trials. So there were 1,740 studies came out of Sri Lanka, but only 2.1% were RCTs, 23 regarding snake bite, and about CKDU, only 11 published. I think now it's a bit more, but between 2000 and 2009, only snake bite, 23 articles, CKDU or chronic kidney disease of unknown origin, only 11 published. So we have what you call need and the research mismatch. There is a lot of need for unknown. The CKDU is still unknown. So chronic kidney disease of unknown origin. Now we call it tropical agricultural nephropathy. We don't know. And the snake bite. So there's a large mismatch. The snake bite incidence is going down because of more industrialization, urbanization. Around $1 billion are spent on antidotes for chemical warfare. Only 20 deaths in chemical warfare agents in the West. From OP, 1 death in every 2 minutes. So there is no translational research. Even RCT results are not practiced. low-dose adrenaline, promethazine, and hydrocortisone in the prevention of acute adverse reactions to antivenom. So this group, led by Asita de Silva, produced that giving a prophylactic dose of IM adrenaline before the antivenom serum given reduces the reaction rate. Antivenom, as you know, is proteins made from horse, IgG, FAB section, FAB section after removing the FC. But the contamination from the FC section, whether you can remember your immunology. So if you give whatever it is, if you give adrenaline before giving antivenom, you reduce the reactions, but it's not practiced. In my unit, there are 4 specialists or 4 consultant grade doctors, and out of 4, I think only me and one other sometimes give adrenaline. Other 2 are not very convinced about the importance of giving adrenaline, although there is a randomized control trial there. Probably what we need is another study or 2 supporting this. So the path from evidence generation to clinical application, this is a slide taken from Canadian Medical Association Journal. Generation of evidence from research is number 1. The evidence summary and synthesis. Forming a clinical policy is 3rd. Application of policy is 4th. Individual clinical decisions. That is the one which is difficult. So individual clinical decisions have various other things, including patient circumstances, patient wishes, and evidence from research. So they are, and even the treating physician's wishes also is to be taken account. So it's not that easy. So the scientific issues are different, even if the research evidence is there. This is a famous statement. In my recruitment strategy, I can use inclusion criteria that are so selective that I can engineer out the possibility of adverse events, or I can demonstrate that my new drug is better by engineering a defect in another drug. This is a statement by one of the academics. Interesting. So what I have this thing again, CME, Canadian Medical Association Journal slide. What we need is more pragmatic clinical trials. Pragmatic clinical trials are needed in developing world, because even if the available evidence is available there in West or the other countries, what we need is pragmatic clinical trials, so we can prove that this works. Sometimes even the things that work in the station A or inside the country, maybe in Colombo, just might not work in Anuradhapura or Rajarata where I work, because of different circumstances, because the culture is different. The cultural factors in medicine are different. So that's why I'm telling the pragmatic clinical trials is needed. In the pragmatic clinical trial, we look at various things like flexibility of the experimental intervention, eligibility criteria, primary analysis, practitioners' adherence, participant compliance, outcomes, follow-up intensity, practitioners' expertise, flexibility of the comparison, practitioners' experimental. So what we do especially in explanatory clinical trials, we put up so much exclusion criteria and inclusion criteria, so engineer out most of the people who have side effects. But we don't see diabetics who don't have maybe initial stage. Probably they go to the GPs or the local health. What we see in hospital is diabetes with all the complications. So it's drugs that are being used in, or the clinical trials that have been done in in explanatory setups might not work. But again, in the West, the if I say in diabetes again, and coming from explanation on diabetes, the new drug DPP4 inhibitors or sitagliptin, which doesn't work much in the West. The HbA1c is reducing by 0.5. But in Sri Lanka, all my patients from HbA1c from 15 to 6, it goes down when you start sitagliptin. When you start sitagliptin, you don't need insulin. There are patients who fail sitagliptin also. But most of the sulfonylurea, primary, secondary sulfonylurea failures responds to sitagliptin. And the HbA1c come from 12, 13 to 6, 5, sometimes 7, yeah. So, and there are evidence now in South Asian patients, sitagliptin or the DPP4 inhibitors works much better, but not in the guidelines or anything. It's what we know. It's what we know. So there are these precise summaries of 4 trials. The A is a RCT of self-supplied supervised and dot treatment, which is probably a good pragmatic trial. The B is a North American symptomatic carotid endarterectomy of carotid endarterectomy in symptomatic patients with high-grade carotid stenosis. So it's an explanatory trial, and at the moment, all the patients I have sent for carotid endarterectomy have died in Sri Lanka. Probably maybe due to so I have stopped sending. I have sent about 8 to 10 patients in our hospital, and all of them died. And I have stopped sending. And even if there is a severe carotid stenosis after a stroke, I manage them conservatively now. It depends so many other factors. Support for the theatre staff, the surgeon's experience. There are a lot of other variables that comes. So what I am telling is that the clinical trial data cannot be used in real life. The other problem is retractions. As you see, I have not got Sri Lankan data, but in similar culture, or perhaps similar culture India, the retractions rate are high due to fraudulent research. So the fraud in research is a problem in our country. You need to address that. It's no point saying we don't have fraud. There is fraud, and it's more fraud is more in Sri Lanka. You need to accept that. Research misconduct is there. You can't hide. It's okay. A bit of philosophical issues. This is a Western scientific method, conjecture, or the imperfect idea, then hypothesis testing, replicability, falsifiability. Falsifiability was Karl Popper, isn't it? Karl Popper, yeah. Popper's falsifiability, then cumulative evidence, explanatory power, and predictive power. So all these things we need if we are putting out a new theory or new theory mainly. So this is the Western scientific method, and I'm just telling that how the Western scientific method may not be wrong, and it depends on three things like empiricism, only observable phenomena, unity of method. All sciences would share the same methodology, value-free inquiry. Science is separate from society, and now we know we do not agree with these premises, especially qualitative researchers. Yeah. Feyerabend has said there is no method. So there is what you should have is scientific anarchism. We don't, although I don't completely agree with this. There are new methods, especially in when you do research on Ayurvedic medicine, which I'll come later. You use a different kind of research methodology. In Sri Lanka, we have a slightly different from Ayurveda. We use Ayurveda, but there is what you call Deshiya Chikitsa, or it's slightly different, and it's supposed to be, it's also quite good. Rheumatoid arthritis in developing world where the biologicals are too expensive. Unless because biologicals, they cannot, the generics are there, generics are also quite expensive. I have used biologicals on few patients and it is quite good, but they have to pay for themselves, and it's quite a large amount of money they have to spend. So in Western, I have written the Western science in this way, and this thing, the slide is not mine, although I have shown this thing because I have slightly modified. It's not a slide; it's a quotation from a book, but I have modified the Ayurveda things from the book according to the Ayurveda theory, because Dr. Senaka Pilapiti, who is my co-author, is a registered Ayurvedic practitioner and family from a family of famous Ayurvedic physicians. He's also Western consultant. He's a specialist physician in Sri Lanka. The body produces antibodies to its own immunoglobulin. In Ayurveda, we think aggravated vata, one of the three dosha, vata, pitta, and sema. Probably my Indian colleague would that is nodding his head, so he knows. So aggravated vata, one of the three doshas, combined with increase in ama or inflammatory state in the body. That's what the cause of the rheumatoid arthritis. In the advised rehabilitation program of exercise, physiotherapy, and patient education decide to improve muscle strength, encourage mobility, and prevent depression. Here we use panchakarma, detoxification and rejuvenation treatment, massage from mahanara and oil, vata balancing diet of rice, vegetables, and lentils. So if I'm turning to be a vegetarian, it's not due to any religious belief, but due to health reasons. I'm just telling this thing. I'm not. I'm still supposed to be an atheist anyway. halfway. Prognosis, there is no cure and high incidence of serious side effects from drugs. But from Ayurveda point of view, good results and anti-arthritic formula of anti-inflammatory herbs. Actually, there is a type of Sri Lankan treatment where they go into some people who have go into higher mindfulness or meditation. Few has communicated with unknown powers. I don't believe. That's a different issue. But then, and they treat. And my wife had what do you call, this is my personal experience, my wife had what do you call supratrochanter bursitis, which I was not very keen on treating because I had to give a steroid injection there, which I have not done for last 10 years, and I had to take to a rheumatologist, which I didn't have time. I was just giving her painkillers, and then I asked her, every time I asked her, shall we go for an injection? She said, no, I don't know injections, no injections. So I was not giving it. And then she went to this local treatment and she got better. After 10 years or 15 years, so coming on and off sometimes. And not only that, I have seen a lot of patients. Now I regularly refer sometimes to Ayurveda and sometimes Deshiya Chikitsa patients who are not conventionally treated. Even Dr. Pilapitiya agrees that in Ayurveda there is not much treatment for cancer, diabetes and hypertension. Hypertension there is treatment but not very good treatment. But for things like diabetic patients complaining of just aches and pains, not diabetic neuropathy. Diabetic neuropathy, of course, pregabalin and duloxetine or amitriptyline works wonders. But for just niggles, pains, and things like that, the Ayurvedic treatment and some of the complaints goes off. So anyway, so there is what you call different system of inquiry. That's why I'm telling there is different systems of inquiry, and the Western scientific method is not the only method that we look into. So I'm not expert on this. There are experts. I just copied, asked from somebody. So it's not a two-way thing in Buddhist dialectical apparatus. Is what you call Chatuskoti. And it consists of 4 members in a relationship. So you can read about this if you want to read. And and what do you call this? Then there is another system in Indian system where this called where you look at the planetary systems and predict what is the future and the present and the health and everything. And that is a mathematical system. And now they have fed into the computers, and the computer give a printout according to your birthday and the time. But if the time difference within 10-15 minutes, the computer printout is slightly different. And it's a mathematical system that they say it's about 10,000 years ago. It was given by the Brahmas, or the mathematical knowledge system was there. There are books, lot of books about that. The knowledge was too much for one man to know, so it was given by the Brahmas or something like that. In like Ayurveda also originated about sometimes before the written history, and there was a big conference in India, and there were famous rishis or famous knowledgeable people who had a lot of knowledge on these herbal medicines, came from all over the Asia probably, and some from Persia and Middle Eastern cultures and China, and Sri Lankan person also, one Sri Lankan rishi also went there, probably before the written history, maybe the Ravana era. Anyway, so that's why I'm telling guys what you call a different epistemological method, and the system of knowledge is available to look into this thing. So universalism versus relativism, or one size do not fit all. Okay, you can't apply the same ethical principles. That's what I feel. There may be universal principles, but the application may be different. So so universalism versus relativism. I don't like the word particularism. Particularism looks like a tribal thing. Relativism is a much more broader this thing. So Even the IRB joint review collaboration is the key to addressing the challenges of multinational research review, because the international guidelines say if you are doing a collaborative study, you need to get approval. When I do collaborative, all my twin research, we need to apply for the King's and the Colombo Javadanapura ethics, where I was working in Colombo. So you need to get the King's approval and the Javadanapura approval. And always we are on pins about the King's approval and the Javadanapura approval both. But I thought it's absurd, because the Kings ask some absurd questions which are not related to us at all. I'm not condemning the Kings, It's always when you apply for the two IRBs and the data is being collected in Sri Lanka, why should we apply for the Kings, although the collaborators are from the Kings and the funds are from the Wellcome Trust? So one size do not fit all. Okay, SAM study. So what do you call investigator-initiated trials? What do you mean by fit? Can't remember now. Anyway, understanding the investigators. A qualitative study investigating the barriers and enablers in the implementation of local investigator-initiated clinical trials. Foreign initiative. For IIT versus FIT. So that's why I said we need to encourage IITs, or what do you call investigator-initiated trials, which are locally initiated and locally trialed out. And Sam told me an interesting thing now, because he did a collaborative study between Cameroon and Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka has much more locally investigator-initiated trials. Yeah, but the problem is some of these trials are not published. That's because one thing, we don't have statistical or epidemiological expertise on publishing complex clinical trials like time. If you have now what I'm doing is at the moment I'm doing a Kotalahimbutu trial on glycemia on diabetes. Kotalahimbutu is a Salacia reticulata. It's a herbal medicine which has a alpha glucosidase activity. Alpha glucosidase is an enzyme that works on glucose molecule affecting the the branch molecule of a large complex carbohydrates. So, like, have you heard about acarbose? Diabetic drug called acarbose. Yeah, it works. So alpha glucosidase activity is there in lot of herbal medicines. Lot of diabetic herbal medicines has alpha this glucosidase activity, or glucosidase type of activity. And actually this Kotalahimbutu was not an Ayurvedic medicine. It's a traditional medicine, and it's been the gene frequency, or the drug was probably not robbed. It was taken out by Japan, and Japan has patented it. Japanese investigators came out. It's it smacks of bit of a colonialism anyway. So, however, the Sri Lankan company, one of the famous biscuit company, has produced biscuits made of this Kotalahimbutu, and it's available. So I don't have to get permission for this trial. So we just did, the biscuit manufacturers agreed to do a study on diabetes. So we did a study. Problem I'm having is that we do glycosylated hemoglobin on multiple time points. So the time and the effect of variation of glycosylated hemoglobin on individual patients needs to be analyzed in a complex time series analysis, with the statistical expertise is not available in Sri Lanka. So those are the things that we have. So investigator-initiated trial, again I'm using Sam's jargon, more applicable to local populations due to building on local healthcare knowledge. More demand-led, and I think this is your study finding, more demand-led and responsive to a country's needs because they are driven by a national agenda. Often simple studies that address important topics such as disease management involve local staff at all levels and stages of trial conduct. So there is more opportunity for learning by doing and skill development. Anyway, there's a lot. International research grant, is it a form of neo-colonialism? Because there is a very interesting international grants. What is the percentage of actually spent in Sri Lanka? Yeah, I'll tell you the same thing. There's again a research study which we did with Kings again. One of my collaborators, I love him because he's a very nice person. But the problem is that there was a statistical postdoc, just finished his PhD, and his 1 year salary was more than I was not a professor of medicine, but I was close to become a professor. I had about 50 publications. I've been working as a consultant for 15 years or 13 years as a specialist. So he's just a postdoc. But I have not done PhD or research, but I have been doing what you call clinical work. So anyway, her month's salary covers my year's salary. So there was a what do you call the grant's main amount of money goes to again back to the country that provides the grant. And there was an interesting after tsunami, and 2004, isn't it? Tsunami came to Sri Lanka and there was a devastation. The King's College again decided to award 3 PhDs to Sri Lanka, and we selected 3 people, and then they said no. We selected 3 people on merit. I was involved in the interview. No, you can't select all 3 from this. We selected 2 Sinhalese males and 1 Sinhalese girl. They said you can't select 2 Sinhalese girls. All came, and we have given marks, and the interview process was transparent. And they said, no, you can't select on merit. You have to give this thing to a Tamil person, which is again what I thought was a negative discrimination. So they determined and what happened was that person didn't complete it. He came to UK and he left Sri Lanka. He claimed asylum. So the 1 PhD was missing. The girl also immigrated to Canada after his PhD from King's, and only 1 local guy remained in Sri Lanka. So that's what happened. So I'm just telling you. The Tamil boy didn't even complete his speech. That's why I feel that research agenda should be set by Sri Lankan Wellcome Trust experience of Sunet Buddhika Agampoti, influenced by the opinion research has expressed elsewhere. So one of my colleagues, he's a brilliant guy, Sunet Agampoti, he expressed his views on tsunami relief or something like that on his website or his Facebook page, which was reviewed. When his grant went, his reviewer was also his Facebook friend from UK or somewhere. According to what he says, which I can't this research grant was selected for the last round, but suddenly, inexplicably, was not selected because of his views expressed on tsunami experience. Because the we expressed that we do not want any mental health support from West, because there were a lot of, rather than helping us, helping psychosocial build up by helping to build their lives back in a what do you call more than pre-tsunami state. The pre-tsunami state, they were maybe living in a small houses. After tsunami, you give a better housing. So like that. So the emphasis of the government and the Sri Lankan academics was to build up psychosocial support rather than the mental health support. So, but the mainly groups that came from West were insisting on psychological treatments, and there was a group that came from France or somewhere who was insisting on this eye movement therapy for the post-traumatic stress disorder. There is a published evidence on that, but then they were trying to do that. And when I asked, I was in charge of approving in some way in approving this thing. When I asked, what language are you going to do this thing? We are going to do it in French, but we'll hire some Sri Lankan translators. I said, you can't do that. How can you address the mental health issues through a translator? So anyway, so clinical. That's why I'm telling, we do not like the way sometimes the aid is being given. Clinical trials have gone global. Is this a good thing? Application to ethics committee has become highly administrative with increasing paperwork. Not in UK, even in Sri Lanka, it's becoming a huge headache. Although I'm a chair of IRB in our own institute, I've been forced to increase more paperwork, and multiple sequential reviews are often needed before a trial can start. Now you have to apply, if it's a multi-center trial, you have to apply for Anuradhapura University, then Colombo University, Javadharapura, all 5 universities you have to apply separately. And if the Colombo University approves, sometimes the hospital says, no, we don't want the university approval, we need hospital IRB approval also. So this administrative hurdle unfortunately further discourages local academic researchers in developing countries. It took 4 years for Dr. Indika Garamana to take permission permission from wildlife department to milk snakes to produce new antivenoms. So what I am telling is this administrative hurdle can be easily overcome by multinational pharmaceutical companies who have resources and staff who are prepared to submit these ethics approval, multiple ethics approval to multiple IRBs at the same time. But if there's individual initial trial, the individual has to do all those things, which is quite difficult. So again, I'm quoting Trudy. Clinical research time for sensible global light. ICH, GCP was designed for drugs. They represent only a portion of many different types of clinical research studies. Funders and publishers insist that all clinical research conducted to ICH GCP. This is what's true here, which is rubbish actually. ICH GCP is only for pharmaceutical research. And we are for everything. Almost all these things, even if you ask for Ayurvedic herbal medicine research, they ask ICH GCP. So then I have to show the ministry regulatory officials about the WHO recommendation on what do you call Ayurvedic Ayush, Ayurvedic Unani, Siddha and herbal medicines recommendation where they have said if it is being used for last 3,000 years and it's in the Ayurvedic texts. So if it is in the classical Ayurvedic text, you don't need animal studies or what do you call pharmacokinetic studies or things like that. And if you are giving the same dose and the same pharmacological thing. Anyway, so this is what Trudy says. So in case of two randomized controlled trials conducted in Sri Lanka, one for snakebite treatment and other a treatment for yellow oleander poisoning. You know, yellow oleander is a nice flower which has a digitalis, the seeds of that tree is a vine mainly, contains digoxin-like toxins. So if you ingest that, people tried it and it was given a lot of exposure in the news, and there was an epidemic of yellow oleander poisoning, and now people say you get a complete heart block. And the treatment of choice, according to the randomized control trial, was anti-digoxin antibody. And there was a special snake in Sri Lanka called Russell's viper. Russell's viper is present in South India and this thing, but Sri Lankan Russell viper's venom is slightly different. And the Russell's viper is one of the most deadliest snakes because most of the other snakes don't go after a man and bite. Russell's viper sometimes go after you. If you trample him, he go after and bite you. Sometimes jumps and bites you. So Russell's viper is an unusual type of snake. Both snake bite, they produce a monovalent antivenom serum and this anti-digoxin antibody, the dose finding study for this yellow oleander study. Both of these treatment was too expensive for Sri Lankan health systems, and although the randomized control trial was done in Sri Lanka, the drugs are no longer being used now. We don't use any of these two studies. You know, the cost are too high. The antivenom serum was about more than $1,000 per treatment. So we don't use it. These issues in clinical trials in complementary and alternative medicine. Ratpituna is a dengue, panchatitta kasaya, papaya leaf juice. So there are treatment for dengue also from the traditional medicine. And the trial boom in India, not yet in Sri Lanka because of the bit of issues. Of the 2,644 deaths, the companies admitted to only 80 as being related to or caused by the trials, and only 40% of victims' families were paid compensation. On the other hand, of 11,000 serious adverse effects that did not result in death, only 4.2 was accepted as related to the trial. So, the participation information leaflet on the pharmacological trials are very long and complex. And they have used it as what we call an insurance state. So it goes through the it's like an insurance. When you agree for an insurance statement, it's all in the minor points, small print, minor points, and the lawyers agree in the court. Lawyers argue in the court and provide a way to find not to pay for compensation. And the poor patients don't have the money or the ability to file a court case. Sometimes these public interest lawyers, or what we call pro bono lawyers, sometimes fight for these people, and some what we call NGOs and some public interest people fight for these. But then again, they were being overwhelmed by the multinational drugs in India, multinational drug company, lawyers hired by the multinationals. So there was a new Clinical Trial Act. This now is published Indian Journal of Medical Ethics. So the new Clinical Trials Act for Sri Lanka was also modeled on people who want to bring the multinational drug trials to Sri Lanka, which after our article and there were a bit of this thing, I think they have again shelved it. So it's not, they have not yet presented it to Parliament. So it's not an act again. So the simile I use is that financial regulations are in place to prevent swindling, but prevents honest people using resources, while swindlers or the people who use bribes prevail, as in Sri Lanka. There are a lot of financial regulation when you do research or when you do work in government sector in Sri Lanka, but the regulations are there. The regulations are there to prevent swindlers, but the swindlers anyway do the swindling, but the honest people find it increasingly difficult to do their work. So increasing the regulations won't work for it's what you call blanket increase in this thing, which will help only the multinationals, but again prevent the investigator-initiated trials. This again, in India, average height in males dropped at a rate of almost 2 centimeters per century in the decades following colonialism. Only 2 decades. No, not only 2 decades, it's about 8 to 10 decades. So a rate of almost 2 centimeters, average height of male. So if you go by the fetal origin hypothesis, so the pancreas became smaller, and that's why the non-communicable disease epidemic in South Asia. And British criminalized suicide in Sri Lanka, and the open economy of pro-Western government in 1970s. We saw because of the increasing stresses, we saw exponential increase in suicide deaths, which only came down in 1990s and 2000 because of the various measures taken to decriminalize suicide, decrease the lethality of organophosphates and agrochemicals. And the pesticides and fertilizer introduction with the Green Revolution increased the production. However, there were a lot of side effects from that, including pest resistance and this resistance, and probably the CKDU or chronic kidney disease of unknown origin, probably due to introduction of these pesticides and fertilizer. We had our own system of agriculture. It's not organic. It has a lot of biopesticides and biofertilizers made of all what you call plant and various substances which are found in the natural environment, which is quite good. And now they are trying to do it in at least the CKDU areas. First world norms in third world context. Anthropologizing suicide. Violence against women is condoned in Sri Lanka, which is not. Sri Lanka is a matrimonial society. The wife is the boss, in my house at least. Yeah, my mother was also again the boss. Although as you see in Sri Lanka, as first woman prime minister, first president, as you see from all the South Asian countries, Sri Lanka has almost, and if you come to my medical school, there are more girls. If you come to medicine and biology departments, almost all are staffed by girls. So Sri Lanka is actually people, if you take enrollment of the primary education, it's almost equal between men and women. But people who are completing the secondary education, it's more women. Boys drop out young age, after O levels or grade 9. They go for various other work. So so the violence against women is not condoned. While studying suicide also describes 40,000 deaths at the end of war. Ariel Shelley, because she was studying suicide, but then in her research publications she has talked about 40,000 deaths at the end of war, which may be true or false depending on your political viewpoint, but it should not have mixed with, if you are really you are following Western epistemology or Western method of science. And these are researchers who have done work. Thomas Wigger from UK. Suffering suicides condoned by Buddhism, which is not Buddhist, or the Bodhisattva has 2 or 3 types of suicides. He has himself, but all for others, not suffering suicides. So this is the issue. The way forward is research agenda should be set by Sri Lankans that let's collaborate on science in qualitative, especially ethical, medical anthropology, medical sociology, especially on sensitive issues such as suicides. Sorry about second L. Privilege the southern perspective. Kindly leave the socio-cultural theories to a cultured policy planners. Sri Lanka needs to allocate funds for those type of qualitative research. And the SACTRAC model is quite good, and this is the SACTRAC model, and actually they have contributed positively to Sri Lankan development of research. Thank you. Any questions? Bit controversial.